All right, Larry Krueger with a 49er video brought to you by Jurens.com. Let's talk about some grades for the Niners for their week 2 victory over the Los Angeles Rams. And we'll go right through the team here. Brock Purdy, I'm giving a B. I mean, I thought Brock Purdy was really strong. 4 for 4 on throws between 10 to 19 yards. So he was perfect in the intermediate range. He had 0 turnovers. He completed 68% of his passes for over 200 yards. He had a rushing touchdown. He went 6 for 6 on the opening drive of the game, which resulted in a touchdown. And then he worked the team down the field and got a second touchdown on a quarterback sneak in a drive inside the 2-minute warning. So about a minute 45. He was sacked one time on the day. I'm going to give him a solid B. If that is he missed some throws down the field. Otherwise, you'd give him an A. But I would say a solid B for Brock Purdy. Now, how about Christian McCaffrey? McCaffrey, I'm going to give an A. 20 carries, 116 yards, and a touchdown for CMC, 3 receptions for 19 yards. He has been fantastic in the early season. So McCaffrey gets an A for that performance. And the fact is, the guy just keeps going and going and going. Deebo Samuel. I'm going to give Deebo an A. He had 5 runs for 38 yards and a touchdown. He had 6 receptions for 63 yards, as far as a receiver. So, you're talking about a guy who went over 100 yards, got in the end zone, fantastic player, and I'm going to give Deebo an A. I'm going to give Brandon Ayuk a B. He tried to gut it out with a shoulder. He had 3 catches for 43 yards. And then he, had to miss the rest of the game because of shoulder pain. He looked like he was in a ton of pain. He still made an impact on the game. He still was there for his teammates. So I'm going to give him a solid B. Juwan Jennings, I'm giving a B+. Juwan Jennings had 2 catches for 51 yards on 3 targets. He's also an excellent blocker. He came through with a huge catch late in the game. But Jennings is just such a force as a blocker that I'll give him a B for his receiving efforts, but a B+ when you factor in the blocking. George Kittle also gets a B+. They targeted him 3 times. He had 3 receptions for 30 yards. He had a couple of excellent blocks. So Kittle, who really is an underrated all-around tight end, I'm giving him a B+ for his effort. You can't, if they only throw you 3 passes and you catch all 3, you've had a perfect afternoon, and then mix in some outstanding blocks, and Kittle gets a B+. I'm going to give the 49er offensive line a B+. You're going up against Aaron Donald in his place, and Byron Young is a really, really good edge rusher, the rookie out of Tennessee, and they only allowed 1 sack. And then you look at the holes they opened for the Niner rushing attack. The 49ers averaged 5.7 yards per carry. So when you only allow 1 sack all day and you clear the path for your running backs to the tune of almost 6 yards a carry, that's getting it done on the offensive line. I'm going to give the offensive line a collective B+. Now, the 49ers on the defensive line. Let's flip the card and talk about the defensive side of the ball. On defense, I'm going to give the D-line a C. 0 sacks of Matthew Stafford, despite the fact he threw the ball a ton. Only 5 hits on the quarterback the entire day. 3 of them, I think, came from Bosa. So, the Niners didn't get enough heat on a relatively immobile quarterback who threw the ball a ton. So I would say the D just gets a C. They could have been a whole lot better. Now, let's go to Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. I'm going to group them together because they're almost like a combo. I'm going to give them a straight A as a combo. 23 combined tackles for Warner and Greenlaw, 16 of which were solo tackles. They combined for a sack. They had a tackle for a loss. They had a quarterback hit. They had 2 passes defensed. These guys are in their super prime, and they're playing outstanding football. They're fast, they're physical, they're setting the tone. They are thoroughly dominant, and they get an A. As far as the defensive backfield, I'm going to give the defensive backfield a C+. They gave up, 34 receptions and 307 total yards and a touchdown. They really could never stop Puka Nacua. Nakua had 15 catches on 20 targets for 147 yards. Everything he wanted, he got. The coverage was way too soft on Nakua for way too long. And you can't say you were surprised because he did the exact same thing the week before in week 1 against Seattle. So the Niners had a whole film to watch of Puka Nakua. They should have known exactly what Puka Nakua could do and couldn't do. They should have been draped all over him within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and they should have been more physical with him. They should have challenged him more. To allow Nakua to catch 15 passes from Stafford just shows that the coverage was too soft and the plan was not good. Now, they did come away with 2 interceptions on the day of Matthew Stafford, so it wasn't like a failure effort. But I'm going to give him a C+. You had the Seattle film from the week before to watch on Puka Nakua. You had a pretty good idea of what Nakua did and how he gets open. And you knew he was it was all these little stop routes and shallow crossers and hitches and jet sweeps. And I mean, there's all kinds of ways they get him the ball, but they're all within like 3 to 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and you knew it was coming. And still, you gave up 15 catches for 147 yards, and you allowed Nakua to dominate the game. So the coverage was way too soft for too long. It tightened in the second half. It got super tight in the fourth quarter. Where was that tight coverage in the first quarter? He wouldn't have caught 15 balls if they had draped themselves all over him. This guy is not a complete receiver. If you get in his hip pocket and you don't give him a free release and you challenge him at the line of scrimmage, he can't run by you. So why didn't they? I thought it was a very, very conservative game plan against Nakua. And then Tutu Atwell, it wasn't like Atwell did nothing either. He caught a bunch of balls too. So the Rams really only had Atwell and Nakua and Kyren Williams. And yet Nakua still caught 15 passes. And when you knew what kind of passes that were coming, and those were exactly the kind of passes that did come his way in the game, to give him 15 receptions on 20 targets is criminal. So I'm going to say C+. A solid B- for the effort when you factor in the 2 interceptions, but a C+ when you factor in they didn't adjust to Puka Nakua until way late in the game. All right, let's jump to the special teams. I'm going to give the Niners special teams a solid B. Jake Moody had one of the longest field goals in Niner history. He went 3 for 3 on field goals. He made all of his PATs. He looked really good. Mitch Wishnowsky averaged 49.3 yards on 4 punts. He looked really good. And Ray McLeod had 1 punt return, and he took it back 13 yards, and he was very solid catching the football. So, it could have been a little bit better. So I'm going to give them a B. Actually, I'm going to up that. I'm going to up that to a B+, just because Moody did hit a 57-yard field goal, and that is a monster shot. All right, how about Kyle Shanahan and the coaching staff? I thought Shanahan's best maneuvers were the fact that he came out in the second quarter when it was really clear that Sean McVay wanted to run the clock all the way down and score the last touchdown. He knew the Rams were getting the ball to start the third quarter. So Shanahan astutely burned both of his timeouts, forced the Rams to, do whatever they were going to do quicker, which they did. They ultimately scored a touchdown, and to go up 17-10. But by taking those timeouts at the end of the second quarter, he didn't allow McVay to burn the clock. He didn't allow McVay to get the first score going into the locker room and get the ball coming out of the locker room, because the Rams kicked off to start the game, so they were getting the ball in the third quarter. So I thought those 2 timeouts were really pivotal by Shanahan, because it gave Brock Purdy a minute 50 or whatever it was, minute 45, to come back on the other side and lead the team down the field. And sure enough, he did. And on the final play of the first half, Brock Purdy punched it in with a quarterback sneak to make it 17-17 at the break. And it was a huge touchdown to get, and they wouldn't have gotten it if Shanahan hadn't astutely called his last 2 timeouts and kind of forced the Rams' hand. So I've seen him play that different ways in different games with different quarterbacks. I really thought that was strategic by Shanahan. I'll give him a B plus and not an A because you got to get your backup running back in the game. I mean, you got a game Thursday night. You know, you've got designs on playing football into February. It's September the 18th. You cannot run CMC into the ground when you have Elijah Mitchell and J.P. Mason and Kyle Juszczyk and Deebo Samuel and Ray McLeod. I mean, you got guys who can run the football that aren't Christian McCaffrey. Use them. So otherwise I would have given Kyle probably an A- because overall, you know, he outdueled McVay. He beat a good Rams team in their place. A division game. You know, it was a solid game plan. I liked the plan. I thought they did a number of good things, but his clock management at the end of the first half gets him a good grade, and that should have been an A-, but then he goes B+ because he let McCaffrey decide, that he wanted to stay in the game at the end, and you're giving more punishment to McCaffrey when it's week 2. And it's a 17-week season. And then you got 3 weeks of playoffs, hopefully, and then the Super Bowl. And the game he's got to be healthy for is in Vegas in February. And it's September, and you're running him, endlessly in week 1 and week 2 because what? I'm not really sure. Because he wants to be in there? Who cares what he wants? You're the coach. You make the decisions. So pull him out. When you've got a lead, pull McCaffrey off the field. Run Elijah Mitchell. Run J.P. Mason. Run Deebo. Run Ray. Run Juszczyk. Heck, you put on a uniform and run it yourself. Run anybody but CMC. And so I'll give Shanahan a B+. Probably should have gotten an A- because I thought the play calling at the end of the second quarter was really strategic and smart, but he gets the B+ for leaving CMC in too late in the fourth quarter in a game that was decided. All right, there you go. There are the 49er grades. Thanks to Jurns.com for being a proud sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.